Okay, solving quadratics part 2, but this time instead of using the graphs, we're going to solve by factoring. So let's talk about what factoring is. Factoring is when you broke it apart into parentheses using Xbox. Now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to add a new step to it, okay? So let's start with Xbox. You have your quadratic equation. I'm going to set it up in Xbox. So in this case, it'll be 10x squared minus 7x, and then your area model would be x squared and 10. Now, remember, you need to split up the negative 7x to put into the area model, so you need two numbers that split up 7x, but multiply and make 10. Well, 5 and 2 are the most obvious. 5 times 2 makes 10. 5 plus 2 is 7, but it's a negative, so they should be negative 5 and negative 2. So we put those numbers in here, and now we factor. So what makes x squared? X times x. What makes negative 5x? Well, negative 5 times x. What makes positive 10 if you multiply that by negative 5? A negative 2. So your parentheses will look like this. You'd have x minus 5, x minus 2. Now that's what you would stop before. You would stop here, but now the problem was set equal to 0, which means if you multiply these two things together, you get 0. This is called the zero product rule. One of these things has to be 0. So if one of them is 0, you have to solve for both possibilities. So you set them both separately equal to 0. In that case, you get two answers. In case this one is 0, in case that one is 0. So we solve here, inverse operations. 5 minus 5 is 0. Here, inverse operations, you add 2. 2 minus 2 is 0. So these are your two answers. So your two x-intercepts, your two solutions for this problem for x is 5 and 2. Sometimes you'll see it written like this. No parentheses because it's not a point. It's just a list of two numbers. So either one, you can do it like this, or you can do it like this. You can write your answers out like that. All right? And guys, that is solving using the factored form. When it's written like this in factored form, you have that. Okay? All right, let's do it again. Let's do this one now. Okay, here's our problem. Now, here's the problem, actually. This one's not equal to 0 the way this one was. So before you even factor, we have to cancel out this 21 and set it equal to 0. So that's now equal to 0. This is 24. This is 10x. And this is x squared. All right, so now this is going to go in Xbox. 24x squared, 10x, x squared, and 24. Okay, so we need two numbers that multiply to make 24x squared, but add up to 10x. So some 2 times 12, but they're adding, so that would not make 10. 6 and 4. Those, if you multiply them, make that, and if you add them up, makes that. So that's how you're going to split it up. You're going to split up 10x with 6x and 4x. 4x. Sorry about that. All right, now factor. What makes x squared? X times 8, x. What makes 4x? 4x. What makes 24? 6 times 4. So your factored form, x plus 4, x plus 6 equals 0. You split them up separately. X plus 4 equals 0. X plus 6 equals 0. What are going to be your two answers? In this one, x is equal to negative 4. But this one, x is equal to negative 6. And those are my two answers right there. And that's solving using factoring. Okay, now, that's complicated a bit. Sorry, I know it's not fun to do, but you know, sometimes they're not that easy. Sometimes they get a little complicated. Here, if we put this in Xbox, okay, multiply the first and the last term, that's negative 48x squared and 8x, and the area model would have 4x squared and 12. Remember, if you want to know how to factor, go back to the lessons from last week. Now, you need two numbers that make 48 and add up to 8. Now, because it's a negative, one of the numbers is going to have to be negative. One of the numbers is going to have to be negative. So my thought is 4 times 12, and that works. 4 times 12. But this doesn't work. If I add these up, that makes it a negative 8. So this one should be positive, and this one should be negative. So that's how I'll do it. I'll put 12x positive and negative 4x. And that's how I'm going to factor it. Okay. So now for factoring. What makes 4x squared and negative 4x? Don't put 2 times 2 because it's not going to work here. You have 4 and 4 right here. So this is going to have to be 4x times x. These two have to make that, because now how do you make this into a negative 4? With a negative 1. And then here, how do you make this 12? With a 12. Don't need it to be negative. Now, here's the deal. Normally, I would say, good, we're going to set these equal to 0 and be done. But there's a little bit of a problem here. Actually, not too much. When we're solving, it's fine. There is another factor in here, but it won't actually matter if we divide it. It's fine. We're just going to set them both equal to 0. Okay? Subtract 12, divide by 4. You're going to get the first answer is negative 3. And the other answer is positive 1. If this is hard to follow, another thing you can do before I took the Xbox is to take out the GCF. We could have taken out the GCF here if you wanted to. They all could be divided by 4. So if you take out the 4, you'd be left with this. And then you don't have to worry about the 4. You can just factor this problem. And this problem is probably easier to factor because what multiplies to make negative 3 and adds up to 2? Negative 3 times 1. So just be aware. The GCF from the first lesson in factoring, that is still possible. You can still do that if you want. Okay? But if you are comfortable with this, you can do this too. All right. This one now. 2x squared plus 7x equals 15. Okay, again, there's a problem. It's not equal to 0. So you want to move the 15 over. So we're going to do inverse operations. Get this. Now it's a trinomial. Now I can go into Xbox. Okay, sorry, it's not as pretty as I was trying to do this fast. Okay, multiplies to make 30, adds up to 7. Oh, this one's easy. 3 times 10. But it's a negative, so which one do I make negative? Is it the 3 or the 10? Well, it has to add up to be a positive, so you want the bigger number to be positive. So we're going to put it like that. Negative 3x here, positive 10x here. All right, now we factor this out. 2x squared, 2 times 1. Now I don't want to put a 2 over here because it won't make a 3, but it will make 10. If I multiply this by 2x, the way I can get 2x is I multiply that by 5. And if I get x squared, I'd multiply it by x. So how do you get 15? Well, oh, it's a negative 15. Then that makes a difference. It'll be a negative 3. See, that's why it's very... if you're going too fast, you'll miss things like that. Like I just almost missed that negative sign. It was going to throw me off completely. So my two factors, I solved them both separately. My first answer here will be a negative 5. So my first answer for this would be a negative 5. My other answer here, you move the 3, divide by 2. Those are my two answers. If I solve them both using inverse operations, I get those two answers.